So now.
My computer restarted, so I'm just going back to I had all my tabs open. Hate it when it does this. All right, reads. Okay, so we'll call to order 7:06. Do we have any public comments or opening or general announcements? Laura.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I was at a walk at Shelburne Farms. And with some other people, it's called UVM's Walk on the Waterside. And Stuart and I had to leave because we were helping build a bridge for Vast on Cycles land. And someone overheard us. Her name was Kita, and she is in a club at UVM, and they're a group of engineers that love to build things. And she's like, FEMA projects have dried up for us, and we're looking for other stuff to do. I heard you're building a bridge. Just know that we're a club that likes to get out and build things.
Oh, cool.
Would you like, I'm gonna send you her email, or, yeah,
Great.
okay. All right, so,
Awesome.
Thank you, Laura.
yeah.
Any other general announcements? Okay. Hearing none. We'll go to the minutes. I will let Dave open up the minutes and scroll through, but for anyone who would like to see it on the screen. Hey, morning, Eric.
Morning.
Just a note, I haven't heard back anything about any more information about the Brown on
Oh,
fire.
really? Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been able to connect with the chief.
interesting. That is interesting. I didn't have any comments for the minutes. Thought they were excellent.
Yeah, excellent as usual, Dave. And I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Great. Can I get a second?
Second.
Yeah, I heard Lynn and Kim racing for second even. We'll approve the minutes on motion. Does anyone object? Hearing no objections. Minutes passed, that might be,
Oh, full attendance.
yeah.
All right. No, not at all. It's just been a couple sessions with which is good.
Excellent. So minutes are approved. Hearing no objections, I just did that as unanimous consent.
Oh, can we guys abstain, please?
Oh, great. Thanks, Eric. Reopening all my tabs. Okay. We'll move into conservation planner update. Dave gave us some excellent pictures of various signs in various states of both brand new and disrepair.
Yeah, okay, so just a couple of updates, but some more significant ones we'll get to. So first it is signage. So here's our new common trail sign installed on this vigorous snag.
How'd you like, I was looking at that and I saw your bag and your tools and I was like, how the heck did he get on that?
Balanced on this log.
Okay. It's like, that looks really precarious. But okay.
So yeah, looks nice.
Is it level?
I think it is level. From this angle, it does a little askew. It's character.
Did you mean to spell trail wrong?
Trial. The common trial.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'll
see. I do believe it's level.
I think it looks
It's
good.
angled a little bit.
No, that's great. I'm in jest.
No, yeah. So we'll see how it weathers, and so this is, just for reference, this is where they took the color reference from. This is the Suckerbrook Hollow Country Park. So you can see it is a lighter shade of brown, probably considerably sun faded. So we can definitely go darker for next time. But this is also to introduce us to the topic that our trail signage across town is in
A state.
average state of somewhat disrepair. And we've got a couple that need attention, particularly this one right here. It's been flagged by the community that lives on Tree Hill Road because they've been getting a decent amount of parking, so they'd like us to replace that sign. You can see it's pretty rotted out at the top anyways.
I have to say, I don't think that fixing the rotted out is gonna stop people from parking along the road. I just, but I understand, I'm glad they brought it to our attention.
We are gonna add a second sign farther down where some of the most common parking is.
That'd be good.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know if you can make it stronger.
Yeah, exactly. So, one thought I had is, given we've got limited time in this session, every 2 weeks, and there's been a lot to work on at, each time in each agenda. I thought to propose a subcommittee of maybe 2 or 3 people who might be interested in taking a look at the signage, maybe going to a couple of trailheads, collecting some notes and meeting to just do a refresh on what kind of content the Conservation Commission wants to communicate, and what kind of general standards we have. I had a good experience working with the design science company that put together this sign. They're responsive and are available to do more signs. We can work with wood or PVC or whatever the materials are. So that's not really a roadblock, but I think it would be great to potentially put that out there and see if anyone's interested in, particularly the kinds of things that would come up would be any adjustments to language, like we did for this sign, changing small changes to language, thoughts about what the standards should be when it comes to what do we need to say for a easement trail like this, public trail and private land, please stay on trail. Is that enough? Do we want to have information about, reminders about dogs, hunting, other kinds of things? You can notice that a sign like this, which takes the opposite of approach of putting lots of information on, is in some ways almost information overload.
Yeah, so I didn't read it when it came.
So, if you look at this sign, the most important thing that this should say is no public parking on the Tree Hill Road, but it gets overwhelmed a little bit. So, yeah, I wanted to put that out there, see what folks thought, and see if anyone is interested in maybe taking that on or participating.
How many trail signs are there? Like, are we looking at all of them or?
These are the
100.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, these are the ones that I just flagged these because I noticed they're rotting out and they need to be replaced. But what we don't have as a town is like an official style guide in terms of what we want our kiosks to say, what we want our easement trail signs to say, that kind of thing. And noting that a lot of our signs in the past have been handmade. There's some variation across the parks. So if we're going to get a new round of signs produced for the next 5 to 10 years or whatever this next cycle is, I think it'd be good to get a little bit of collaboration on that front before just put it in order to place these.
Do we have an inventory of signs?
We do not have a complete inventory. I don't think that that's entirely necessary. But some reflection on those topics of, what should like the main trailhead signs say? Do we feel like that needs any, the sign at the entrance to 5 Tree Hill, the sign at the entrance to Sucker Brook, that's another one that's gone. There's no sign at Sucker Brook. Because that rotted and was removed by Public Works.
Already?
Yeah, that was.
What's your timeline for this?
I would say, I'd say medium soon. I don't think that it is.
This winter project.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's urgent. I will probably try to add that secondary sign on Tree Hill Road at some point this, if I can get that in before the end of the year, that'd be great. But, replacing this, you can see it's gonna last the winter. It's still doing
Yeah.
its job. And same with this sign, but they're not in good shape. They need to be replaced. Our signs are fading out, and I think it would be helpful to have that feedback as we head into a cycle of replacing this infrastructure and wanting it to last.
I can be on that subcommittee.
I'm happy to as well.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Thank you, Lynn.
All right, Lynn, we'll get together.
Okay. Thanks.
A walk in nature.
Sounds like a good winter project, and thank you for flagging that. For us all, Dave. I think that sounds good. I'm curious, how many public easements do we have that aren't marked at all, and so therefore just generally not used? So are we sort of limiting our trail signage to areas that are specifically maintained or mowed or whatnot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
easements that we have that aren't developed, we don't have any signage on.
Mhm.
And there's many of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's many of those.
So those may not be specific easements, they may be like along the eastern edge of the
Of course.
parcel, but not yet negotiated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of, when this is, I didn't put this on my list of updates, but the two projects that the Conservation Commission reviewed last time, the envelope adjustments. With the Hayes property, we discovered that the trail easement that Laura noticed on the final plans was never executed historically. So that was a 2007, I think, subdivision, if I recall right. And we looked all through the records, and it just looks like it's one of those things that kind of slipped through the cracks. It was drafted, it was checked by both parties, and it was just never executed. So the DRB, upon recommendation of staff, made that a condition of approval. And that easement will be executed.
So it'll be in the land
So-
record, basically.
What's that?
That just means it'll go into the land record.
It'll go into the land record and it'll be signed. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
catch.
So great catch, Conservation Commission. And that will be added. I did do a little more research noting that if you look at the topography there, in that southern area where that ADU is proposed, it really is too cliffy for that easement to be viable. But I also looked into some of our trail planning records, and the intention of this easement was really to chain with other easements, particularly the one to the north, and potentially future easement on the parcel adjacent to complete the connection to Butternut Road. So as is with that 10-foot wide easement by itself, it's unlikely that you could get a full trail all the way through to Butternut Road. But it's still important to have that for
Mhm.
the goal. Okay, so speaking of trails and needing work, this has been a theme that I've noticed over my first 6 months as conservation planner is, we really have a decent amount of work to do as a town to get our trails into good condition. We've got a lot of infrastructure that seems like it was developed and put into place, around a similar time frame. And so it's falling into disrepair. And, in the last probably 5 years, we're having a lot of our infrastructure out on our trails start to fall apart. And I recently had to make the decision last week that the boardwalks out on Mud Pond West should be closed. I know they've come up in this committee before. We've known that their condition was needing to be replaced in the long term, but it's been we've heard more and more reports from the community, and it's clear that there's some safety concerns there. And I went out yesterday and was taking a look at the west side boardwalk that connects to the pond viewing platform on the west side, and it's really, those boards are about to go.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah, so it's not in good shape. So it's also it's not a great look right now. So those are closed. I put some some signage up out there and a notice on the website. We also have a report from the community that the beavers are back in their original location
Oh, wow.
in Allen Brook. Let's see, at the confluence,
Mhm.
which is cool and exciting. This dam is active again.
Mhm.
They are in the lodge. I saw one just the other night, a lodge right about here. But this is now underwater and the boardwalk is floating, so this is also closed. Not officially, I'm putting the signage up, I don't
Nice
think
new
it's,
boardwalk reinstalled 5 years ago.
it's not excessively deep. The bridge is currently above the water line, but the
On your side or.
puncheon to get to it is floating.
Who's
So-
responsible for that?
The town.
The town is responsible. okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that neighborhood was.
Right now, this is town on land, this parcel here where the confluence is, so, that is the third, kind of key component of our trail infrastructure that is now out. So there's a lot of work to be done, unfortunately, all of the three major projects, Allen Brook, Mud Pond West, and now this, none of those are easy, immediate fixes.
Yeah.
Now, this one is the smallest and would be the easiest if not for the fact that the beavers are there and they're active. And so it's a little bit hard to know what to do exactly without kind of letting them be for a little while and seeing how that situation develops. How deep is it gonna get? It's gonna get much deeper. Can we fix it? With the current water depth in mind, we already know that that particular site was passed over for a beaver baffle
Oh,
from the
baffle.
state. The last time the beavers were in residence there, so that option is not really on the table. Laura,
Do we need to put up a sign for the neighborhood? Cause I don't know if this happened, but I thought someone told me they saw someone dismantling the dam, like when they were there before, because I think they didn't want the walkway to be underwater. Do we
interesting.
need to say anything or just let it, whatever happens, happens?
I think that is certainly something that I'm happy to receive feedback from the Conservation Commission on. I haven't received any reports of that yet.
Okay.
I just received reports from somebody in the neighborhood saying, hey, it's flooded out and we can't get through. So I do think some signage is warranted in terms of that awareness going out and, that section of the trail being closed unless you got muck boots. They go up at least a foot or a foot and a half. But yeah, I'm open to receiving
What
feedback.
is the flow of water? I'm just trying to orient myself here. So does it go from right to left?
Yeah, it's been southwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, right to left.
Okay, so and then you said the beaver dam is to the,
To the west.
This is the beaver dam here, and I actually included a few pictures. So
right,
this is these are floating, so if you step on them, they go down.
yeah,
So that's the one that heads over towards Pleasant Acres, that path.
I believe so, but this is looking north, I think.
mhm.
So I think that would go up towards Wildflower Circle and Michael Lane.
Oh,
So
okay.
here's the main bridge where the Living with Beavers sign is.
Yeah.
Which is high and dry and stable, but the puncheon leading up to it is floating. You can see the
Well,
pieces.
cross pieces, yeah.
Yeah, evidently the sills were not, were just placed there and they're floating out.
Hmm.
And here's the dam
Mail
in,
it in.
yeah, in the golden hour, looking very picturesque, but you can see that it's active. It's got mud.
New material.
And when I was out there last week, I did spot one of the beavers coming out.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I would be interested in discussing whether we should have something at the neighborhood entrances to the north and northeast. North and northeast, forget the names of the neighborhoods, but coming from that end, because people thinking they can get through will get halfway through. I mean, today they can't get all the way to Community Park anyway, but,
Mm,
so I think there's gonna be fewer people trying to use it.
Yeah,
But
Look
it's
at that.
still a nice walking area back there though.
Yeah, and I know people are dog walking just.
Yeah.
Just sort of east
Out
to west,
back.
you know, from the Michael Lane entrance, you know, through to some of the neighborhoods.
Right, I was gonna ask, cause I don't know how accessible it is with the bridge being out anyways for the nature trail, but. Sounds like if you can go from that subdivision to Wildflower, you'll get at least a minimal amount of traffic.
Right. Yeah, let's see, I think,
By the way, there was a very nice beaver tree in the middle of that picture.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very active area.
Still dangling.
Yeah, still dangling. Yeah, I think like a sign of something like, you know, pedestrians on notice that this is an active beaver area, like the landscape is subject to change, like very quickly because of that dam.
yeah, what about bridge closed? Uh. But then what, beavers are active?
well, I was wondering, you know, I've been thinking a lot about how to make it positive. So bridge closed is a negative statement.
Right,
I can't get through is a negative statement, you know, beware of landscape changes is a negative statement. I was trying to think, is there a way to put some signage up that's more positive, like,
The beavers
you know,
are back.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Beavers at work.
Well, yeah,
Construction.
people are, you know, come and see if you can spot one, like they're here, they're back, or what, I don't know, something.
If you
Something
could-
more positive.
If you could get a beaver silhouette with a construction hat on,
I'm sure.
you know,
Make a lot of money.
beavers at work.
royalties, yeah.
Or like a picture of a beaver and like landscape restoration in progress, like
oh,
something.
there you go,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny, but also I think it's one of those things that we tend to just jump to like the negative for people, and then it just reinforces, oh no, I can't get through right now because of the
Right.
It
beaver.
does seem though that this would be one of the signs where, you know, travel at your own risk and discretion is sort of needed,
Mhm.
right?
Instead of closed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That could be the subtitle.
yeah, exactly.
The positive.
Yeah,
So
Beavers
that's,
back.
yes, but I thought I heard David say that that trail is closed. Is that one of the ones that you said is closed?
I've not made an official announcement yet. You know, I was just out there last Friday checking it out and, you know, you can waddle along if you're wearing, you know, I've
And waders.
my mouth boots and, you know, I was able to waddle along, but it's not, you know, the risk of getting wet, somebody slipping and falling is
Mhm.
is there. So I think from town perspective, the interest would probably be to close it.
Well, can the Conservation Commission recommend that? You know, like, I generally think a fair warning that like the trail is flooded seems like
Right.
appropriate.
Yeah.
But if you wanna sort of, I don't know, I don't really like closing trails just because like.
Nature's
Natural,
happening.
yeah, natural activities are,
Yeah, I mean,
Happening.
I appreciate that comment and recommendation. I think we can try to work with it.
I mean, does anyone feel otherwise on here?
yeah, it's hard to know without like when you're walking, you walked on it.
Yeah.
Right, because there's like, oh, it's floating, and as long as you just kind of walk in the middle of the boardwalk, you'll get there as long as you have proper wet gear on, but then there's like, you know, totally wonky, somebody's gonna fall in the water kind of situation. I don't know where it stands.
I'd say it's in between that.
Okay.
There's one
Those scary
one
spots.
independent punch-in section that was fully floating.
Mhm.
Hmm,
Although most of them are chained together,
That's what I was
right? But
wondering.
there's one that was.
I, given that we can't even keep people off the boardwalk on the nature trail, like, I don't see what a trail closed sign does other than a CYA from the lawyers that, you know,
I mean, that's basically what
yeah.
it is.
Would it be practical at all to just remove those floating puncheons? And that,
Yeah, it's possibilities.
and then
That would
basically,
be
it just looks
easy.
like you're just wading through, if you wanna go through, you're gonna have to, it's pretty clear, you're gonna have to wade through
Right,
open water,
You're
as
not gonna
opposed to try
fall
to
off
do the
infrastructure.
dance through a floating punch in, yeah.
mhm.
Well, but
My concern is that they would not be stable. Then you have someone with,
Right.
if someone doesn't.
It looks stable,
Have-
but it's not.
right.
stable.
Yeah. That's
then
why,
they could
yeah,
fall, especially someone with mobility.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I'm sitting there thinking, if you just get rid of them altogether, then,
Put them back when, if
Yeah.
and when they would be effective again.
Yeah.
That's an option. This also, this is getting ahead of the conversation because we're talking about whether to close or not at this point in signage, but. This is an example of an area that might be suitable for a floating. Something that is able to
Exactly.
float
Like
and
a
rest. Like a dock essentially from each side, that way when the
Mhm.
beavers are active, it floats, and when they're not, it rests.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I was thinking about that. I don't know anything about that, but
Yeah.
it certainly could be a temporary solution.
Just
Or even a
consider.
somewhat long-term solution.
Right, I'm
Yeah.
thinking long term.
in an area like that, I think that could be a good long-term solution,
Yeah.
something about Allenbrook where there's flowing water, no,
And-
but.
and
Right.
also-
Yeah.
Also an opportunity for educational signage, like why does this boardwalk float?
Yeah, there you go.
Right now, it might not be floating, but if that's the case, it's because the beavers aren't active.
The doctors might have a used one sitting around somewhere you
Yeah.
can put in.
Their yard down there, Jen's has a lot of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, and actually, it strikes me as something that we could potentially make happen much quicker than some of these
Right.
other. Repairs.
And
yeah,
maybe there's some UVM engineer students who would love to
right.
help
They
install
probably
such a
would with
floating.
the beavers. They would
Yeah,
probably be
true, although
interested.
what I think about this one that is that there's probably, given, that there's. Docks, I don't know what you said, doctors or something like that.
The dock
It strikes me that there'd be ready-made products that you can just
Yeah.
purchase,
Mhm.
floating dock.
Sure.
And maybe a
Um,
used one, which would.
As opposed to requiring.
and the platform is on steady ground, so that's. what-
Yeah, the central
something-
platform is on steady ground. The question
be fixed
is,
to that.
will the dam be
It could go
raised to the
higher.
point that that will be flooded?
Right.
So, but, yeah, that's a great point.
So sorry to take us all the way down to the fix end of the solution, but moving backward, it does seem like everybody would be in favor of some sort of signage at a minimum. It sounds like
Yeah,
the existing infrastructure. Not telling people to stay off of the existing punch it is probably not a good idea.
I would also just say is that like, then I heard your comment about the mobility issues, like. If you're getting to that access point from either of those neighborhoods, like that trail is. I ran that
Rudy.
trail. It's gnarly, like it is not an
Right.
easy trail. So if you can navigate the routes off of Michael or Wildflower, you can navigate
Hmm.
potentially a wet route if you're so inclined to do so.
Mhm.
Or you jump the barrier at the nature trail, right? And clearly are not mobility limited.
Yeah,
Like you said,
Creek
it could happen
said,
to anybody that you expect something to be stable and it's not.
Of course,
And then.
I think that's why we should have a sign to say like portions of this trail may be
Have been
flooded
flooded by
because
beaver
they're-
activity.
beavers are active, yeah.
yeah, I,
Travel at your own risk, basically.
Yeah,
yeah, I'll keep that in mind and I'll touch base with, other town staff. I think. When it comes to these things, I'm thinking, what's the sort of immediate action and then don't stop there, what's the fix, appropriate fix, so. It may end up, most likely be signage, possibly poured across the trail if, the town feels like it's. The
liability outweighs.
Yeah, the liability
benefit for
risk
the
outweighs.
outcome.
But I think your note is important, and I do think, right, the nature of primitive trails is such that people. Expect to encounter obstacles at times, and so the important thing is that there's not something that presents as a safe, stable surface, but is not.
Yeah.
And, okay, great. Thanks, well, I wanna keep us moving
Yep.
on time, cause there's plenty, so just know the last update, on my list here is that. I discovered last week, more fun for the Allenberg Bridge,
Love any updates.
Yeah,
section.
that little section, this whole parcel. is an involved parcel with the Williston Central School, same ownership, for which there is an Act 250 permit.
Uh-huh.
So we need additional permitting to make this happen. We need an Act 250 amendment. I got a jurisdictional opinion from the Act 250 coordinator. And the good news is that it should be relatively minor. Essentially, the fact that we already need a wetlands permit, stream alterations permit, is a demonstration that there is an impact on the, an adverse impact on the ecosystem there, and that's enough to trigger the requirement for an Act 250 amendment. It's not necessarily an undue adverse impact because we're trying to solve a safety issue. There's an existing structure. We have plenty of grounds as a town to want to repair this, and the solutions proposed so far has been deemed a reasonable solution, given that it passes all the permitting hurdles. My expectation is this will not slow things down out of our, given that we're already in this window of we can't do the work over the winter. But that's additional hurdles that need to be overcome before it's.
And cost wise, is there any additional cost?
Cost wise, there probably will be some additional cost for the permitting assistance. But that's likely not to be significant in comparison to the construction costs.
And the executive order doesn't make it any easier.
Executive order.
Not housing, this is not housing.
Not
Unless they put a house proposed. on
Beaver
there.
housing.
Okay, so I'll stop there so we can jump back on track, and that's a great segue, Dave.
Yeah, next item on the agenda is, so I flagged this for the group at the last meeting, executive order 0625. So Dave, it looks like you've done some sleuthing and have found the official guidance, and I read through what I could of last night, and I'm hoping that you can make some sense of all these guidance documents that you've linked. And if you haven't had a chance to open up as many of these as you can, very helpful links.
Sure, yeah, so this is, I really put this in for kind of informational, but yeah, we could definitely go through it a little bit. Basically, this is in walking you through a chain of links that get increasingly specific. So the very day that we discussed this, October 15th, was the day, later that day, that A&R released their interim implementation guidance. They clarified a couple things right away, which is that the rules are not going into effect until
An amendment of the rules
exactly.
officially.
Until the amendment process is complete, but they're expediting that, and they expect it to move relatively quickly over the next couple of months. And they already have this initial implementation guidance in place that clarifies some of the questions about where this is expected to apply. That's kind of the key factor there. So I provided a link directly to the governor's executive order. I would go right there. And a link to the A&R EO webpage, so we can jump there. So the Agency of Natural Resources provided a quick overview of the components that are included. Again, this is for anyone watching this recording, Executive Order 625 is aimed at promoting housing, construction, and rehabilitation. That's the title of the executive order. From a policy perspective, the intention is to make building housing, make housing
Building
projects
housing.
easier to help facilitate building housing, particularly in areas that have already been identified as growth centers through various labels. In practice, some of the recommendations that go along with that are a little bit controversial, as we've talked about, and more guidance was needed on when they're going to apply. There is still worry in the environmental community that the modifications to the wetlands rules could result in some environmental harm. With the clarification, this does help us understand things. So if we look at the DEC implementation guidance, let's see, I think it's.
But no, that's the.
Oh, I always get confused.
Yeah.
About this. Okay, so I encourage you to take a look at this. It doesn't answer all questions, but if we jump to, it does it is pretty clear about a number of things. You know, where certain aspects of the rules apply or not apply, how is it being implemented by DC? So they did a great job of jumping into this very quickly and trying to resolve the confusion as much as possible. So let me go to the wetlands. Okay, so you can see what does the executive order say, just in terms of its language? When will this language apply? So they've clarified that there is, you know, they're in the rulemaking process. Certain changes to state wetland permitting are not effective immediately. So that was a question about when those changes were going to be going into effect. DEC is initiating this rulemaking October 25 with final rule adoption targeted for February 2026. So they're trying to move pretty quick, taking place over the next few months. And I'll note that, you know, a rulemaking procedure does include a public comment period. And let's see, Federal, what, okay, so
Is now a
yeah,
good time to ask? a question?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when we're in our usual deliberations over whether or not like a habitat disturbance assessment or a site layout is appropriate, there's never a state wetland specialist from A&R in our meetings telling us like you have to follow X, Y, or Z rule. It's usually like it's already sort of like baked into the plan by the time we see it. Can you just help me and perhaps all of the other commissioners understand like where would that process sort of show up in our process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the changes that would be the most impactful would be the requirement or the rule that some wetlands that are not mapped, it's possible that they can be overlooked and not regulated during development process. Particularly, the governor's order says that class 2 wetlands need to be mapped on the Vermont State Wetland Inventory in order for them to be regulated for housing projects that qualify. So it's possible that when people are entering into the development process, they may not be required to get a wetland delineation by the state. Not entirely clear yet that will absolutely be the way that gets implemented.
So previously we would have seen like a wetland delineated site map.
Mhm.
And now they might not have that wetland delineation. It would just be comparison of like what's on the state mapped website.
Yeah, well, I can imagine a scenario where they come in and say, you know, the state has said that this is an exempt project or exempt area. You know, there are no mapped wetlands on this parcel.
Got it.
The other area, of course, where this could be impactful is the change in buffer distance from 50 foot to 25 feet in certain zones. And although, so our bylaw is still written to require a 50-foot buffer.
Okay.
And I believe I believe the way it's written is that a delineation is required wherever wetlands, wherever there's evidence of wetlands or something along those lines. So there may be enough wiggle room in our bylaw as written that somebody who's not required a wetland delineation by the state may not be required to get one by the town. Currently, though, we do still require that 50-foot buffer. However, I do think that there will be, I do think it's likely that that discussion will start, you know, if this becomes concrete or when this is expected to be implemented. And it's expected that this will be a concrete component of the wetland rules that, you know, all the questions will be answered. When that occurs, I do think it is likely that conversations will start happening that encourage the town to revise the bylaw to match the state guidelines. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
I have one more question, then I want others to jump in with others' questions or whatever. But one of the key areas here is, looks like you're about to get to it, is designated growth areas. So as I read this guidance, the ARZD would sort of not fall under this, but everything else would. mostly the downtown area as well as the suburban growth zone. I always forget what we're talking.
Residential.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So I still have some questions about the areas that are included. We don't technically have a downtown. I think we have growth center. We have a village center. I don't think we have a new town center. Neighborhood development areas and opportunity zones I'm not familiar with. We don't have an opportunity zone. However, the area that is, these next two are the ones that are kind of the most. I have,
Fuzzy.
yeah, the most fuzzy, or I have the least clarity from. So areas that have received a tier 1A or tier 1B status, that hasn't happened yet. Towns, I believe, are responsible for applying to receive that designation for certain areas, particularly even for growth centers. But this last one, Act 250 interim exemption areas, exempt from Act 250 considerations. This is where we get into, you have to go all the way down to the appendices to see what those Act 250 exemption areas are. And there are descriptions that I'm not fully informed on exactly what those apply, but for example, it's like a 1/4-mile buffer from some major transportation zones, a 1/4-mile buffer from growth centers and things like that. So one of the most helpful things that I encourage you all to look at is this wetland permitting modification area for residential housing viewer. Cute name. So this was put together by the state and executed really quickly, which is great. I agree. And what they have attempted to do is show all the areas that are either expected to receive this or are candidates to receive this, along with the VSWI map. So the green is the updated VSWI map. Now, this is new as of 2025. So in Williston, this map is pretty darn good. It does a really great job of predicting locations of wetlands to the degree that is a lot better than the previous generation of the map. And many of the, most parcels that I believe will have significant wetlands will probably be on this map.
Smaller wetlands, perhaps.
Yeah, some smaller wetlands, maybe not. We definitely could still see that scenario I described earlier, but. So the
Laura, do you have a question?
modification areas are the areas. So I'll turn off a couple things just to try to make this clear. They've included the sewer service area because of the requirement in the executive order that areas that are involved have to be within sewer service area. I think in Williston, this is largely, the sewer service area covers all the designated zones for the
Is
most
that
part.
pink? Is that the
Mhm.
pink? Okay, that's what.
Yeah.
No, the sewer service area is this pale
Oh,
white.
Oh, pale white.
So there are only a few areas I think are outside of that, this little bubble up here. Where the
And that's fine.
Global Foundries area is. And just south of 2A, there is a buffer zone from the growth center that is not in sewer service area. So I'll turn that off. And let's turn off the two buffers because those are the most confusing. Okay, so you can see this is our growth center, Taps Corners. That is the place where it makes the most sense from a policy perspective to apply these changes. It's the area that is, Williston has written its bylaws to encourage growth in, and encourage concentrated growth. Here's the village center and the appropriate buffer around it, village center and buffer. So that's the other major area of focus. And if it were just those two, that would be pretty straightforward to understand. That's what comes up for Williston. But then we get into the questions of those Act 250 exemption areas and what that's involved with. And that's where I still have some questions. So the urbanized area with transit route buffer, I believe this is a
Industrial Brunel and 2A.
1/4 mile, I think it is a 1/4 mile buffer. We'd have to look at the language from the certain major transit routes, in this case, the top part of 2A and Route 2 going into South Burlington. And it looks like component of Industrial Ave they've mapped as well. So that extends the potential area where this would apply. Connecting to Essex or Essex Junction in South Burlington. And then the one that I have the least clarity on the degree to which it will apply is this priority housing project within buffer. This I measured as a half-mile buffer, is what I thought I measured, but the language that I looked at in the EO and A&R implementation guidance made it seem like there was an Act 250 exemption that is potentially available till the end of 2027 within a quarter mile from growth centers. So I still have some questions, but what they're showing us is that there's the potential as these rules get made and finalized, that this whole buffer around the growth zone could be in play wherever the sewer service area is.
Overlaps with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious how some very recent projects like the Glazer project which hasn't been built yet, and could still sort of take a look at this and call it, because it's in the residential growth zone, is that a neighborhood development zone? It's
Yeah.
within the sewer system, like all of those considerations. I'm just wondering, like, how many things could get
Right.
thrown back at us potentially.
Yeah. I don't think, from everything I read, I know there was some discussion of whether there were retroactive components to this. I don't think that, I didn't see anything that suggested that there was any retroactive change involved. In fact,
Yeah, it
From the-
specifically said anything before a certain date will be 100% on the old rules, and anything from that date
Yeah.
forward, you could request in your application that you want to be considered under the new rules, and we'll see how it goes, basically, is what
Okay.
it said.
yeah, I haven't dug into all of the components of the EO extensively yet. I've mainly focused my research on the wetland rules. So it's possible that what folks were referring to last time, maybe that there may be some language in there in another section, but from my understanding and from looking at in our implementation guidance, what we've been discussing, there's nothing that's gonna be happening retroactively. In fact, it's really not until the rulemaking process is complete that this will be primarily implemented.
And hopefully no one will want to go back to their
Right,
permits and,
Go back to your
it's
state.
just not worth it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's worth noticing, right, this, from what we're seeing here, I do not believe that this would have impacted a project like Glazer. It would not have impacted a project like CSWD Murph.
Although I did see that they have some wetlands pretty clearly identified in that first parcel.
Yeah, that's that high quality
Whale,
wetland at the top, yeah.
And Glazer, of course, has lots of wetlands on it.
Right,
Does this layer also is it capturing stormwater ponds?
that's a good question. I think those do come up from time to time. I don't think, generally, a constructed stormwater pond is not a regulated wetland, as far as I understand.
It would typically be near wetlands though, right? Because you would put it in your lowest area or
Good question. I think they're,
soil types.
yeah,
I don't know, in my mind, I feel like I always see them like, oh yeah, that's probably where a wetland would have been anyway. Sort of.
I definitely do not see
I
my
would,
neighborhoods.
yeah,
Well, the reason I asked is when you were just cruising by the solid waste district. The that new facility they built, it's a little bit south of the original location, right to the right, that one,
This one?
that blue right there. To me, it looks like it would be constructed stormwater pond, but. That's just what triggered the thought.
I don't know enough about stormwater guidance, but to my understanding, you can't just take an existing wetland and turn it into
No.
stormwater. It's gotta be an upland.
Right.
You're essentially creating additional stormwater capacity.
Okay.
So I don't think that most would be mapped, but it's certainly possible it could happen retroactively, and we're just zooming in on, the degree to which some of these little former farm ponds or current ponds are captured by this, I don't know.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe the next the next time this will come up on our agenda would be as if the formal rule is out.
For
And
comment.
if, for comment and or, do we want someone on this commission to review it, in advance and potentially, have a discussion about whether we should submit comments?
Sure.
And then, based on that rule, interpreting what the town's current bylaws.
Right,
yeah.
Stand.
Yeah, great point. And I think that will be a very important place for the Conservation Commission to weigh in on. If the Conservation Commission feels very strongly that, the bylaw should not be revised in any way, or that you want to participate in recommending specific language, for example, if Williston was going to modify its bylaw to take this into account, should it be more clearly limited, to just Taft's Corners or just, however. There are many possibilities that could break down, but I think certainly Conservation Commission input in that conversation, if and when it occurs, would be valuable.
Okay,
Thanks for all that information.
yeah, that was helpful. Okay, so do we have an in-person visit with Fellowship?
We do have in-person visit with Fellowship at 8:30.
Okay, I think that's good.
Actually, I can't recall, it might be online.
Okay. But the point is that Fellowship will be here at 8:30, so
Somewhere.
budget discussion for the next half hour. So I opened up the memo that we submitted last year. And made some revisions to it based on the passage of Article 6. And tried to sort of reflect that overwhelming support that we received through that town vote. Basically every other paragraph or every other sentence, it was pretty much trying to beat that winning horse as much as possible. Sorry, terrible, really. So I'll just walk people through these edits and then we can sort of have a discussion, hopefully a chance to read it. Basically starts with the Article 6 language and having, I tried to think of how many different ways can you write 75% approval. So I started by saying an overwhelming 3-to-1 margin. I think we do need to have the final estimate of what the town thinks it's gonna collect from this.
I can provide an update on that.
Excellent.
So I got an updated spreadsheet of the Environmental Reserve Fund. Let's see, can I switch to this screen real quick? Let's just switch. So when we last looked at this, we were looking at 2025 line item, the $40,000. I got clarity, these numbers here, when looking at the Environmental Reserve Fund spreadsheet, this is the fiscal year. So that $40,000 was last year.
Yeah.
And a transfer from town means from the town budget. So that was $40,000 that was put in fiscal year 25.
Right.
In fiscal year 26, this is the sum that represents the half cent on the tax rate.
Okay.
And it's $108,330. In addition, interest was fully posted for fiscal year 25 at $20,000. And that has started to accrue for 2026. This number will go up.
Yes.
Over time. So the current balance is $658,935, which reflects your expectations.
Yes.
And clarifies the questions previously.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that does answer the question. So the way I sort of structured this memo is on the assumption that it would be an easier ask for us to the town to basically say that this is the same amount that voters approved without going back to the voters. We recommend the same funding level. I know we had some discussion 3 weeks ago about whether or not it should be a higher amount. Last year, I think our initial recommendation was 150,000. I know it was. We were given 0. And thus we went to the ballot initiative. So part of the argument here is that everyone's now accustomed to paying for it, and everyone approved paying for it at this level. I think it's a really easy ask to the select board to say, keep funding it at this level because there's overwhelming support for it. I don't think that 150,000 would be like out of, you might lose a couple votes, but like ultimately that was not what was put out to the voters, right? We had that discussion a year ago. We made the decision to conservatively ask for the 110. I think for the time being, that's what we should proceed with. That's my recommendation, but I think that's really what I anticipated the conversation this week sort of being around is, do we all agree that that's the right amount, or should we talk about having a different amount?
So a couple of questions for
Eric and Laura.
about the amount. A, do we have any outlook yet at all on the status of the overall town budget? I wouldn't expect it, but just that would be helpful to inform the conversation. Like last year, the town was looking at some significant increases and had to make some cuts, if I remember correctly, to get closer to to reduce the tax burden increase. Second was, can we? So I agree. I think it's good to just take this evidence to the select board and be like, hey, very strong support from your constituents here. Could we offer them no, not a carrot, but could we suggest like, hey, how about we put this in the town budget for some period of time? I don't know what, 5 years or 10 years or something, then check back in with voters with another ballot in 5 years or 10 years to see how the voters feel about it.
That's how I think of it, Eric. I think of, we should probably hold steady with the current amount, at least for a couple of years, and then anytime we feel like it's out of balance and then wanna adjust it, I would put it to the voters.
I agree, because I know when the select board is looking at this, that's just easy for them to think about too. It's like, okay, this amount, they don't have to think, oh, should it be more? Just, this is the amount that the voters overwhelmingly approve, so let's just set that aside. And also, the language in that ballot item did not say this is for this year only, and I know people thought it was permanent, just because the people I talked to did.
I didn't have time to add that paragraph, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would put that paragraph between cost neutral and value of conservation, and I would say time limited, or like something about that, because Eric, what you just suggested is interesting, and let's talk about that in this context too, is like, let's make that recommendation be for a half penny. And whatever that amount is estimated at.
Yeah, not 110, but a half penny.
Right, the half penny should continue for a period of 5 years in the town budget. Like, let's have that discussion. That's an interesting idea. What is a recommendation like that to because they don't make that.
I would recommend it year by year, not like in our heads, we can be.
In our
we
heads,
think it's like 3
5
years or 5 years until we think we want to revisit it, but who knows? I mean, maybe next year we decide, no, we really think as we look at things, it should be increased, and we only keep it for 2 years at this level, and then ask the voters. I
mean, I think that makes sense.
Is that what you were thinking here?
Or were you actually thinking like, tell the select board, put this in the budget for 5 years, expect it for 5 years?
That's kind of what I was thinking, was ask them to put it in the budget for 5 years, so regard, I don't know what fiscal, I almost forget what the state fiscal year is, but fiscal year 26. But when did we vote?
Fiscal year.
Was fiscal year 25?
Yeah, we're in fiscal year 26 right now.
Yeah.
That was what the vote was for.
So in fiscal year 30, that's easy, fiscal year 30, put it out as a new ballot, maybe we keep it at half penny, maybe we bring it up to 3/4 of a penny or whatever, like you were talking about originally.
Yeah, 7.73, yes. Something really easy.
I think it was 3/4, which also was like flexes up, but like the full penny was like 200,000.
that was too much.
Yeah. And which makes sense, because we're at 110 at a half penny, so, yeah.
I guess I just saw that as a kind of a negotiating point with the select board, if there is still opposition on the select board to putting this in the town budget straight without going back to ballot.
The town doesn't make a 5-year budget,
I know.
that's the only problem.
But it can, yeah, it's true, everything gets evaluated yearly, you know, in the whole of the fabric. But these things are projected out 6 years, and the town does like to level fund things in their plan. So I do think, I mean, there could be a certain value from winning people over for the sake of simplicity, just saying, okay, great, let's put in, you know, 110 for the next 5 years and then see how it goes. You know, do you
Yeah,
think
okay.
that the tax rate is gonna adjust so much in the next 5 years that, you know, you would be losing out significantly on making it a half penny? That's an open question, but I just wanted to piggyback on that point, that I think there is a certain value from the budgeting and the select board standpoint of having and understanding a very simple budget concept.
Any other thoughts on this? I'm thinking right now that the, I'm just kind of making a placeholder in this draft that we're working on here, that it would sort of be like a soft 5-year, like,
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
is like the Conservation Commission anticipates maintaining this funding for 5 years. And then considering,
we
Putting
anticipate
it back to
making
voters.
this recommendation at the half penny rate for the next 5 years.
I don't wanna box us in, but I like the simplicity for
Yeah.
them of thinking, okay, we know what to expect for the next few years.
And then they don't have to hear from us until 2030.
Or our memo could be kind of boring.
We'll just go away, fade away in the background, at least when it comes to budget stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's another value thing is, right, if you don't have to be making that case every year, that's very valuable.
Not using
And
up your capital.
right, it's less information overload for them as well as they're fielding all kinds of other things.
And then I'll say, after 5 years, the WCC will reassess if this funding level continues to be appropriate for the ERF.
We said plans to reassess.
Yes.
Sure, I don't know, I just don't wanna commit to like.
Yep.
What if after 3 years, we're like, oh, it really needs to go back after the voters, I don't want them to be like, well, you guys said 5 years.
And that would be, I mean, and that would be fair, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess what we would be reassessing is if the revenue is sufficient to meet the needs of what the ERF is
Yeah.
intended for.
And whether
And-
voters will approve any
Yeah.
change.
But I think I can't recall if it was Laura's point, maybe Eric's point, that, you know, nothing is fixed for the future, you know, they plan out. You know, anticipated amounts, but everything is truly considered year to year, so even if we said, you know, we think this should be the plan for the next 5 years. You're not, nothing's being fixed, so.
I did forget too, I don't think when we did our calculations on how much per year should be added, I don't think we anticipated or built into that calculation, interest. And so, you know, in reality, over the last year, we basically got 128,000 because of the interest accrual, so that's closer to the
Very
150 we were going for.
Although, to what degree does interest balance out inflation?
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
it's helping buffer inflation,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so that's really helpful. It sounds like on the primary point, we all agree that some kind of time limited, you know, we'll go back and reassess how much we're generating, but like generally we're consistent with what we asked for from the voters, that's the right ask for the select board to continue funding. Great. So I think that's I think that is the main point to talk about, but then we should go through the rest of the memo and just make sure that it's still sort of structured the way we want. Did you want to say something?
I just thought in general, we probably can condense our memo a bit with this round. I think it was a bit lengthy in part because we felt like we had to make
Yeah.
the case so strongly in
And
past
I
years.
think there's a lot in
So I
the
think that
back
would
end
be
that
good.
you can take out too, yeah.
And the one thing before I forget it, and we can come back to it whenever we get to that section, but one thing that was not in here is that what we are doing since it was approved, which is we have an increased focus on, our passive strategy, which is already in place, but we're also beginning to talk about an active strategy to complement that. Which makes sense now, given that we feel like we have some funding to work with. I just wanted to know, like, we're working on it. We're not just asking the money's gonna sit there in the account, which has come in before. Well, how big are you to let the account get? Like, well, we don't control when we use it, so it'll get as big as it gets until we need to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had that thought as well, we're going through that. So where would you want to put that? Would you put that in one of the bullets or one of the paragraphs below?
I think it goes in a paragraph below those bullets. Maybe it goes in the 30 by 50 paragraph.
Why 30 by 50?
Yeah, because that's like our strategy piece. So like what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to 30% of Williston conserved by 2050. How are we gonna do that? Well, we have a passive strategy that's been in place and we're refining it, and we are also talking about an active strategy around town priorities. Let's say something like that.
I wonder if that could be reframed as opposed to why 30 by 50, just to, what is the goal?
Yeah, really, what is the goal? The goal is
What is the target?
the right 30 by 50 is kind of what we're getting at. It's not just going for volume, but like trying to have some sort of strategy around what is that 30% made up of.
Did I get this right for everyone's sort of review? That the town, that was our recommendation, that the town adopted it in the town plan.
Yes,
That
we
was,
could reference the specific time plan goal, but he has that on tap. But see if I can find it. Comprehensive plan. Chapters. Land-based conservation.
it wasn't anywhere in the town plan before August, right? That was my.
30 by 50?
Yeah. Okay.
That came up after, I'm pretty sure that came up after the last town plan went.
Okay.
Was
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah,
It's interesting that it was in this memo last year, but it wasn't really
Okay.
documented anywhere.
so it
It's
is,
sort of like, that was our goal.
it's 13A
Mhm.
is the town plan goal. Is it goal or is it objective? I guess it says objective.
Objective.
Objective, so objective 13A in the new town plan.
Mhm.
And it says, just for reference, is one sentence. By 2050, Williston has permanently protected 30% of its land area through conservation easements and acquisitions.
This is gonna, I think, reopen the conversation we had last year, but the question's popping in my head, that on that first bullet on the screen, this amount is insufficient to acquire the goal of an additional 2,500 acres. Begs the question, what is the amount that we would need? I'm pretty sure we hashed all this out last year and decided to not put that in there, but I can't remember why.
Yeah, I remember that conversation too. It was actually, I think it actually was still in there, Eric, but it was in the paragraphs and we just decided to streamline the bullet, is my recollection. Cause I think we actually explain.
Cause we did the math, right, to figure out how many millions of dollars or whatever we would need to have to
Exactly.
acquire 20 or to serve 2,500 acres.
My only note about that is that that's the sort of technical math of like how much, what's the price per acre and how much money would you need to raise to buy it fee outright.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think the case you want to make in this memo, my recommendation is you want to make the case that this is the appropriate amount to be funding the ERF.
Mhm.
And not leave kind of ambiguity or questions for the select board of like, oh, it's not the right amount, then, what does that mean? Knowing that certainly fee outright purchase is not the only tool that we have access to, and conservation easements or, matching funds always come into play. So even though, yes, on a technical standpoint, the input, it would still be falling behind the rising price of land to a certain degree. I wonder if for the context of this memo, that detail is not necessary to include at this time.
Probably not. But
So this is a good place for us, I think, to make that sort of transition to like, let's look at these paragraphs and really figure out what, because I didn't feel comfortable cutting whole cloth big sections like that. Yes, including stuff that was written, well before I even joined the commission as well. But to answer, maybe before we do that, to answer your question, Eric, it's on page 4. If you could scroll down, Dave. Well, how did WCC determine the cost of conserving land? That's where we sort of do the math to show that at 150 per year, 50% match, we get to 2,500 acres by 2050.
oh, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So like that math is in there, but it is on the 4th page of a very long memo, and it does sort of get confusing. And so, and then also the notes on depending on the tax rate, like that, those notes, I think that was an easy one. I think I almost did delete that one, but I just sort of wanted to,
I'll just go ahead and say, I think the notes section can go away. I don't
Yeah.
think we need to discuss how the half penny, 3/4 penny
Yeah.
would be calculated.
Perfect.
I do like, I think just for institutional memory from one year to the next, I do like having all that in there.
Once it's
and
gone, it's gone forever, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yes, it may be on the 4th page, and yes, I did not scroll down to the 4th page.
What about the how did WCC determine paragraph?
Yes.
Yeah, I would keep it
Like, and even like, what is the history of the ERF in Williston? I haven't read that yet this year, but I think that could be useful to maybe update and keep in here just for context for.
What if you structured it as, would it be possible to write a concise 1-page memo that primarily makes the case that this is what was voted for, and this is what should be funded, and then like an informational appendix, this is the history of all these other
Additional
yeah.
I mean, that is basically how it's structured now.
Yeah.
Let's go through it. Starting at the top, we have 10 minutes until fellowship gets here. I think we can pound that out. So
paragraph 1 is going to be Article 6 passed. We are recommending that it be sustained through the town budget.
it takes up a lot of space to sort of rehash it here, but like I think that is important context.
Mhm.
Right. I also agree with Laura's comment that, there's nothing in this language that suggests this is a short term.
Right. So this is what I have written right now. Unfortunately, the WCC has been informed that Article 6 is not a permanent authorization. As such, the select board will have to determine whether the ERF should be funded through the town budget plan or once again go out to ballot.
I'm gonna try to not edit too much, but that first sentence you just read off, I have some thoughts on it.
So then the next sentence is the Williston Conservation Commission believes a second ballot initiative in 2 years would be confusing to voters and instead supports funding the ERF at the same allocation approved in March.
I'm wondering if we should say, like, if we should specifically say that we believe people understood they were voting on like the idea that it's confusing. I think like should we say we think people thought they were voting in perpetuity?
Yeah, through conversations with people. I mean, many people I talked to said, oh, I thought that was permanent.
Everybody I've talked to thought it was permanent.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I know we don't want to like wordsmith this or edit it, but I kind of want to be explicit about that.
Eric, do you wanna like send David
Well,
a sentence or two of what you think it should say?
Yep.
Cause we're gonna look at this one more time before we send it, right?
Yeah,
Next
I think the
meeting. Yeah.
goal should be to
Yeah.
approve it on the next meeting, which is the 19th, is it, I think? The 19th,
I really trust your judgment, Eric,
So,
on these types of things.
I think,
so.
yeah, wordsmithing and collaboration should really happen over the next 2 weeks, so that a final draft can be looked at
mhm.
on the 19th, and, you know, with the expectation that, you know, only minor changes would be expected.
And I'm not committed to any of this wording here. This was really just the first draft, so. I'm happy to take any wordsmith. I do not have the ability to do Google Docs. This is a Word doc. I don't know how we want to set that up if we're gonna actually do live edits over the next 2 weeks, but I'm happy to take a crack at this again, probably this afternoon, and then I can resend it to you. If I send this as a Word doc, can you send it to like Eric and I as a Google Doc?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to basically subcommittee this, you know, noting
Yeah.
that, you know, and a number below quorums, up to 3 people could participate in a back and forth discussion, wordsmithing this. And obviously, David, you take a central role. Eric, sounds like you've got a lot of strong ideas about this. I don't know if there's another person that would want to be included in that, but if you wanted to pass it back and forth and kind of take the feedback that was received today and, you know, kind of do that wordsmithing to get it into a final place. And of course, I've started working on updating that figure, and I'm happy to assist as needed with any other components like that. But I'd say largely this is be great if those 2 or 3 people could bring this to completion for next meeting.
I'm interested in everything, but I think I should. Get back from this one.
Right, I just put some text in the chat and I'm happy to like put it into a Word doc. I think I just have a feeling about like that one point. But I'm happy to help with that one single point.
All right, great. So Eric and Kim and I will take this offline. I think the recommendation that I'm hearing from this discussion is, and again, we don't need to cut it short because we're just waiting for fellowship now at this point. But streamline this into a sort of one pager, but I interpret one pagers as basically being anywhere from 1 to 2 pages. And then a sort of ongoing appendix that sort of lives with this recommendation and is like a reference point for any select member or commissioner in the future to essentially like review the full history.
Mhm. I know we also want to have a page about the ERF on the website, so I just don't know if like whatever is not gonna be part of the main memo, whether that could just be what we put on the page of the website.
The other day, actually, and it was.
Yeah, and just say like,
Helpful.
for additional information about the history and usage of the ERF. You know, visit this page on the town website.
Right. When you reviewed it, did it look mostly up to date?
No, now that I see that, I'm trying to remember, I think I was actually I was looking up the ballot,
We had the page on the
Item.
ballot initiative, yeah.
so that's,
We could repurpose that page and.
yeah, that's what that was really helpful.
Let me see if I can locate that so people can see real quick. I know. Yeah, environmental
the
reserve.
ERF
town
page?
ballot.
I Googled,
Yeah.
Williston Town.
It's there.
25, yeah, that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a lot of great work that was done for this, and
Yeah.
I imagine most of this is still relevant. It includes the FY 26 memo. So could be updated.
Yeah. The one thing that wasn't mentioned about Article 6 versus the town budget, David, was that that it got even more votes than the town budget. We talked about the 3/4, but that actually it was more popular than the town budget. So
The margin was a lot narrower for the town budget. So,
Yeah, so it's not that, I know that the town budget is the select board's piece that they put forward and, but I think they can appreciate that it was more popular than the general budget.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to point out in case, because I know not everyone is on your computer on the Zoom. Kim put some language in the chat, suggested language.
Last time I tried that, the chat would only go to you.
Yeah, I wanted to share that. I think that same thing occurred here. So suggested language is from our conversations with community members, we believe Williston voters thought they were voting to fund the ERF in perpetuity.
Mhm.
Um,
That's perfect.
You could even say, we know that many Williston voters.
Yeah, I think as long as we are aware that a significant number of Williston voters, or that I always like hesitate to use significant, but it means a really specific thing.
Substantial.
But like a substantial or a sizable or something that like we know there's a lot of people that thought that, right?
So the next draft that will circulate, I just incorporated that by saying, from our conversations with the community, the WCC believes that Willistonians were approving a permanent authorization and a second ballot initiative in 2 years would be confusing to voters.
What do you think of, we'll work on this offline, but like a second ballot initiative may be perceived as an additional tax or something
Right.
like that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid people are going to be like, more?
We already did this. Yeah.
Right, I also think there's not really appetite for, from town leadership to put out that because the library is gonna be going to ballot.
That's, the library was.
And so it would be viewed as competition with that potentially.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I think your point is a very good one, Kim, that, another ballot could be viewed as additional.
Yeah.
Yeah, the library's gonna be a significant one,
Mhm.
very significant.
When I looked at my tax rate and it was a line item. And I think that there was some uncertainty, at least among us, before the tax bills were actually issued this summer as to how that would show up. But I don't know if everyone saw that, but it is a line item on your bill now.
And it tells you how much that line item is.
And it was $20 for me. Which was exactly what we said is like the average Willistonian is gonna pay. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. It also did sort of clear this up that like it is a special tax. And that would be sort of different. And that's the sort of context that I was
Total
writing.
number doesn't change, but
Right.
the bill changes.
Exactly. It's like you're not gonna see that $20 additional tax on your bill now, but your cost would be neutral. So that's why I framed this as it's cost neutral for the resident. Even though it sort of technically moves from it being a separate tax from the lawyer's perspective and is now just part of the town budget. Eric, was there something you wanted to just say right now so that I can make the edit?
Sure, and that. Scroll down to the top, it's still on the first page.
Oh, still on first page, yeah.
Yeah. Farther up. Alright, so, yeah, though unfortunately the WCC has been informed that Article 6 is not a permanent authorization. I think we could. Change that a little bit.
Of course. I didn't like that sentence either. I just needed to get it in there.
Yeah, I would say we learned that it cannot be a permanent authorization per state statute. So like the way it's written, the select board can interpret that as it was their decision, but from what I recall, we learned from the town lawyer that that's a state statute that you cannot have a recurring ballot item. Or you can't have a ballot item I don't recall what it was, but we.
I remember it differently. I remember it being the lawyer's discretion, and I remember other towns have taken ballot initiatives as permanent. I just remember Eric Wells telling us that the lawyers have told me that this initiative won't last for more than a year. And
That's, I guess that's the difference, is that it couldn't legally last for more than a year.
right,
Like I think the way we had originally had it framed, the ballot language framed was the voters would vote for it to be funded in FY 26 and every year thereafter or something like that. Am I completely wrong?
no,
I
I
think
think
it's a little sketchy these days.
as our mind. If we had a statutory reference there, I would love to see it, because my recollection of it was that the town lawyers have taken a very conservative viewing of this, because the Shelburne WCC basically, they were trying to get this ballot initiative passed as a permanent authorization, and they were somehow able to do it. So I don't think it was statutory.
Is South Burlington's also permanent? They have a
I
full
didn't-
penny on the tax rate.
I see, that's what I'm saying, is that like, I think other towns have done it. So like, I really feel like it was the Williston lawyers just being incredibly conservative.
But I don't know the details. It's possible it was passed and then made permanent in through some other mechanism.
I don't know either.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I'm kind of suggesting that we can change it. I don't care about the wording, but if it's just like, we have been told that this tax cannot live permanently on the bill. If that is still the town's legal opinion of what this initiative passed overwhelmingly 3-1 is, then like, you gotta put it in the budget, right? Because we're not going back to the voters every year, like one way or another. All right. And that's ultimately like what my message to them in February will be when I go to that meeting. Or maybe I won't have to, because they're gonna do it. But we had to go last year because they gave us a goose egg. And so, but I think it's a different conversation entirely this year because of the English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, it looks like fellowship is just showed up on.
Oh, great. I don't see him here.
I just letting them.
Oh, great. Okay, so then we'll stop sharing the screen. I'm gonna play with this a little bit this afternoon. I'll send it to Kim and Eric, and Dave, do you want to do it as Google Docs? Can you set it?
You want me to set it up as a Google Doc?
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
send
yeah,
you a new
okay.
version.
Sure.
And then if you send it back to us as a Google Doc.
Sure,
that's
I
fine.
can do that.
Great, thank you. All right, Adam, you're right on time.
Welcome, Adam. This is the Williston Conservation Commission.
Hey everyone, good to see you all. Some familiar faces for sure. Some of them I may remember, may not remember from our limited remote meetings as such. But great to connect with you all again. Here to provide a little general update and just talk about the trails, talk about the state of our organization, and some things David and I connected on a few months ago. So yeah, I mean, one of the last meetings we were, I think, in the process of making some adaptive upgrades and adding the quiet connector. To my knowledge, that seems to be working really well. And I know that trail users are really pleased with the ability to get to the Mud Pond Country Park side trails by accessing that one passageway on quiet connector. So it's, I use those trails often myself, and there's just it's really nice to be able to get out of your car and spend that time in the woods immediately, whether I'm out for a walk or also out riding my bike there. So that feels like a good success story for our organization. And again, thank you all for helping make that happen. One of the last components of that project was removing some of the old bridge material. So we talked to David about some of the potential lumber that could be repurposed from the quiet connector. And then the bridge upgrades that happened throughout the Mud Pond Country Park network were transported last winter using the snow grooming equipment makes it a lot easier than walking it out of the woods. But we were able to transport that down to the kiosk, and then earlier this summer we removed all that material. So that project officially wrapped up this past week, where Nick from the Vermont Mountain Bike Association and Eric from our trail crew went and assessed all of the final changes that were made to the trail, to just ensure that the goal was met to allow adaptive riders to pass through that area. And Vermont Adaptive does utilize those trails for programming. Particularly having a Burlington office, there's a lot of use, Sunny Hollow, Saxon Hill, and now Mud Pond. So that project is officially wrapped up. In terms of other happenings this past year, we had a very unique change of weather from the last 2 years, with a lot of rain and shifting into drought this year. Overall, our organization is really focused on what is happening in terms of climate. And we feel those effects, whether it is heavy rain, it's a drought, or it's fires out west. All of those things actually impact our operations. Having trail crew out in the woods with elevated heart rates, working on the trails throughout the day, poses a real challenge when we do have some of those smoke and air quality alerts. We rely on some amount of rain. And when we have a drought like we did this summer, it actually prevents us from doing some important trail maintenance, because you can't disturb the soil when the soil is that dry. So we didn't have any specific projects in Mud Pond, but just thinking more broadly across our networks. The drought did prevent some of the closures of trails due to heavy rains and muddy conditions. But at the same time, it sort of slowed some of our operations for rerouting some of those sections and identifying where some of those wet areas are throughout our networks, because there was such an absence of water this summer. Some of the, recap of the last few years at Mud Pond, we've done on average about 270 hours of maintenance per year. And then this year was actually a little bit lower. I think some of those higher totals, we were, bouncing between 200 and 325 hours the last 3 seasons. And this year we were at 142. We might do a few more hours to sort of wrap up any tree work or storm damage through the end of the season, but slightly lower on the maintenance side, which is sort of expected when we do some significant infrastructure projects. Things tend to get overhauled all at once. So just sort of a standard maintenance year for us. I don't have a percentage wise, but hours wise, 30 of those 142 hours was tree work. And talk to David a little bit about this, like in terms of standard maintenance. We're doing leaf and debris removal. We're doing some drainage and dirt work. We might be patching up some bridges. The Mud Pond top loop has some older bridges that occasionally need some patching. And as we know about these things, we're out there doing that maintenance. And also weed whacking is, weed whacking and trimming branches is sometimes an underlooked task. But Mud Pond has several areas that can very quickly overgrow and, sort of impact your trail experience when you're getting snagged by prickers or, branches in the face. So we try to keep tabs on that. Mud Pond has a few areas that we try to hit every year mid-season to knock back some of the growth from encroaching on the trail. But the tree work is something I think is a little unique to Mud Pond. We talked to David about forest management, and we've done forest management activities in Heinsberg with County Forester, and we're in the process of doing some Saxon Hill with a private forester, Greenleaf. And this is something that, like, as a recreational group, we definitely support, and we can work with, foresters and forest management plans. And we see a lot of benefit to, what that can bring to a forest, sort of knowing, like, Mud Pond is an example, having a lot of planted white pine, sort of all hitting an age of maturity at the same time as they are right now. When we have wind, like we have these past two storms this past week, I sort of just wonder how many trees are going to come down, particularly at Mud Pond and Saxon Hill, which are two areas that have sort of planted plantations. And so this year, even with the absence of storms, like, we still had 30 hours of tree work, which for our trail crew is something that we've invested a lot of time and energy into getting proper training. The tree work that happens from storm damage is oftentimes pretty dangerous and can be a really highly skilled labor. We're lucky to have Eric on our crew, who has been doing this for 10 years and worked under several other former landscaping professionals that have some arbory experience, as well as sending to multiple rounds of trainings. I think Eric has received a total of like 100 hours of training over the course of 5 years. We've done, if you're familiar with game of logging, it's a training like level 1 through 4, plus additional storm damage cleanup saw training. So overall, the maintenance this year at that sort of 142 hours is roughly a $5,000 cost to Fellowship of the Wheel, which doesn't really include some of the, like, general admin costs in my role, with communications and opening and closing trails, and things like that happen throughout the season. This year was relatively low on our materials, just $80 to dispose of some of that pressure treated wood that we hauled out, and a few sort of miscellaneous screws and fuel for the blowers and things like that. Any questions off the bat about some of the general maintenance?
I have a question, and then Laura, why don't you start? Go ahead.
How much of those hours were volunteer? I know that I used to get emails from Fellowship about, can you volunteer on this day we're working at Mud Pond, but I just haven't seen them, or maybe I just haven't looked at the website.
So this year, let me actually pull that up. I'm not sure if we did a volunteer day this year, because the majority of work that was happening was like more specific drainage work or weed whacking. We haven't leveraged volunteers for some of that, like weed whacking and trimming, because oftentimes it involves, setting up with equipment and those type of things. Some of those like larger projects, like hauling material in and then like maybe constructing part of a bridge, is something that is really helpful, or more significant dirt work. And for us, the work this year was a lot more focused, and just not a great, you don't always have great projects for that larger volunteer base. We spent a lot more time in Heinsberg and Saxon Hill this year with our volunteers, and I'm just going to try to pull up real quick our volunteer tracking. I can't recall off the bat if we did one at Mud Pond.
I'm on those emails. I didn't see anything for Mud Pond.
Mhm.
I probably would have remembered that.
Yeah.
After your question, I have one. Dave.
Yeah, I actually have two questions. I think Dave flagged for us a couple meetings ago that you guys were thinking about possibly making some mud pond trails bi-directional, and right now they're single file. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that, and then in the context of your general trail maintenance and work, can you just remind us if Fellowship of the Wheel receives any funding from the town of Williston for that work? I'm just not, I'm not remembering if it's in our budget at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I did check my notes and we did not have any, sometimes we have corporate like volunteer groups that will work during the day. And I was just checking if maybe one of the ones that Eric led happened to go to Mud Pond, but we did not this year. We were with the flooding last year in Heinsberg. That network took a large toll because it has a lot of slopes steeper than 8 to 10% grades. And so we've been doing a lot of really significant drainage work there, and that's where a lot of our volunteer focus went this year. Thankfully, last year during the last 2 years during the heavy rains and flooding, Mud Pond managed water really well. You know, Eric and I have both been surprised at how well that network's been managing water the last couple of years. So
It's all the roots.
yeah. But to your questions, I actually had in my notes to talk about that aspect of bidirectional.
Cool.
So, you know, one of
You
the
can, yeah.
one of the main thoughts there is that when we did the adaptive assessment, the initial assessment a year and a half ago, one of the adaptive riders that was with us, you know, kind of meandered up that climb. And then when we went down, we used the vast trail to go down to sort of complete the loop, because the downhill portion of that trail, the Mud Pond Country Park downhill trail, parallel to the vast trail, has some ledge features and a lot of tight trees that just didn't allow us or like weren't feasible for making adaptive upgrades. And sort of at the end of the ride, Cleary said like, oh, it'd be great to, you know, go up that double track for another lap, or, you know, to be able to come down that single track. And it, you know, just thinking about the way that, you know, even myself might use that network, or other people, like you know, it's kind of like one fun part of using trails is to like experience maybe your daily walk in a different way and do it the other way around. And I think, you know, to be honest, like most of the trail users I see out in the country park, you'll encounter people walking, you know, counterclockwise on both those sorry, is it counterclockwise on both those loops, which typically run clockwise. So there's the upper loop and the main loop, and those both run clockwise. And you know, the main thought behind this is that this isn't a network that's high volume, and it doesn't really have the potential to be high volume because of parking constraints. So that's one of the main reasons to consider opening, you know, the majority of sections up to be bidirectional, to allow you to use the trails in a different way. And, you know, in terms of like trail users and yielding, you know, that's a messaging that we push every single year. And I know that there's, particularly in the winter, we have that signage up. We're working on kind of maybe adding more signage in terms of like trail user etiquette, just to keep getting that information out to folks. But yeah, that was the main thought. The idea was kind of inspired by that one comment, and then got me sort of thinking about like, oh, it could be interesting to actually use the, you know, initial climbing trail for descending as well. And like, you know, you could run the whole network clockwise, and then you could run it counterclockwise, and, you know, you could sort of double your experience, but it wouldn't feel like the same trail because you're seeing it from a different perspective. And then,
I like it. I don't see any issues with it.
yeah,
Would it require
terms of-
like widening it in parts, Adam?
what's that?
Would it, would making it bi-directional require that it widens? To
No,
allow
it actually
pass-
like it wouldn't change any physical attributes other than just allowing people to run it in a different direction. Like in the I think the only segments we would keep like single direction would be the on country downhill on the sort of like east side of the Bass Trail. Because that
Yeah.
trail is pretty tight. It's pretty technical for those same reasons. It wasn't a good candidate for the adaptive upgrades. It's also not a great candidate for bi-directional traffic.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I like Kim, I would agree with that one exception that I don't see how that trail could be. That seems like a natural, one directional trail, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you answer the budget question?
No, I was just going to say, in terms of funding, working in the past with Simon and Melinda, like they've always expressed that if we have, sort of special projects, that, reach out, like when we're doing these adaptive upgrades, committed $3,000 to supporting that project, which I think was around a $15,000 overall budget for materials and labor. And so have found ways to be supportive in the past, but not there's no like annual contract or annual stipend for the work that we're doing. And it's something that we, to talk a little bit more about the state of our organization, like we've seen a lot of like growth and we've like made a lot of improvements over the last few years. And during the COVID years, we had a lot of support, but that support is starting to wane a little bit. And, I think economic pressures are being felt across the board from, corporate sponsors that typically had capital to support us, members that would buy, multiple memberships supporting chapters sort of throughout Chittenden County, throughout the state are, bringing that down to maybe like one network that they ride all the time. So we've seen our membership numbers drop from over 2,000 annual members to around 1,450 members this year. It's unlikely that we'll get many more members at this point in the year through December. So, that's a really significant drop over a 4-year period for us. And so it's highlighted like, we still have all of these major weather events and these networks we need to maintain. And we still, have an expectation from the community to like host these different community events. And it's pretty exhausting in the nonprofit world to like try to sustain the same level of doing, while also trying to work through fundraising challenges. We've talked a lot about how do you better connect and like, share with the community like that. Yes, this is a town municipal park, but a lot of work goes into, ensuring that when you show up on any given day that you can almost guarantee the trails will be in really good shape.
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge we faced, and at a global, a more broad conversation with the trail user community, and the VEMBA board is sort of highlighted like, okay, some of these chapters are providing like trail user, like foot user passes or day passes, like QR codes, just to sort of help encourage like, hey, if you enjoyed this walk, like here's the, an organization that's putting a lot of work into making sure that these, bridges are maintained, these trails are maintained, and like that you continue to have a good walk here. So that's something that like we would be interested in doing. I think there's some mention on the kiosk after you cross South Road about that. But additionally, like some of the feedback that's come back to Vemba through some of these statewide conversations is that a lot of people in the town that like live there sort of say, well, like I pay taxes in this town, like and this is my town forest. Like, don't those funds maintain this space? Like that's why I live here, and that's why I pay taxes, is because I have access to these public parks and these public spaces with trails. So I think there's sometimes that's not everyone. I'm definitely not saying that's every trail user out there. But even within, the mountain bike community, people that are very core to our initial mission of creating riding spaces, trails that you can ride your bike on, still don't subscribe to us as a viable reason for supporting annually. So
I
that's
just
one.
want to back up what Adam is saying and say that like when in doing research about this, like across northern New England, these trends are like pretty pervasive. And I think we're seeing this kind of like tapering off of engagement that blew up during COVID. And also when we look at sort of like the money that is available for organizations like fellowship through grant opportunities and the like, it's very rarely for maintenance. It's just like not as sexy as the building of new trails. And so I think like there it might be worth us as a conservation commission just considering like what the actual full value of the networks are and what the costs associated with that is, and thinking about maybe like a more holistic solution, because I do think this is like I'm seeing lots of people in Adam's position across the northern forest talking about these same trends.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Beck.
I want to just call it is almost 9 o'clock now, and many of us have day jobs to get to. I appreciate that comment from Kim and Adam's overall message, and certainly those subscription numbers are pretty shocking. Meanwhile, I'm seeing $6,000, $10,000 mountain bikes on like every other car at Taft Corner when I'm driving through there in the summer. So I would be happy to revisit.
But bike
For
sales
the-
are down too. Just to clear, like way down. Like bike shops are. So those are really expensive bikes, but they were bought
3 years
a
ago.
few years ago, and people are not buying new ones.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
Laura, did you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to say it might be helpful for one of us to write a letter to the editor for the Williston Observer and just sign it with your name and Conservation Commission about what we've talked with you about today and how much we enjoy walking at the Mud Pond Country Park, and it would be great for people to donate to Fellowship for the Wheel.
Could be one option.
Yeah.
I also heard the QR code that was also for people who are in the VIMBA or fellowship network, maybe like, it's a sort of pass, but like if you're not in one of those networks, a QR code at the start of
today.
that could be super useful. Those would all be possible conversations that we could have about like, do we want to put that QR code at the trailhead, pond or something?
It's a good one. So I'll jump in to bring us to a close here as well with 2 comments. First of all, Adam, just echoing Dave and everyone's comments, thank you so much for coming. Adam and I, as we're connecting, we thought it'd be great to do this now, partially just to get an update and have a chance for Adam to meet a couple, Lynn is new on the commission. There may be some other members you haven't met and for folks to meet Adam, but also to keep, 2 ongoing conversations in mind. One is the upcoming management plan update for next year for Mud Pond Country Park.
Yeah.
So the conversations about forest management, trails, and how that park is really managed is going to be pertinent. And then 2, to continue this larger conversation about our partners as a town, and have their evolving landscape, noting that the status quo for organizations like Fellowship of the Wheel and Catamount in particular, as our 2 major mountain bike trail management partners, the status quo where they were expected to really cover 100% of those management costs associated with these networks is not gonna stand the test of time, and we really need to, as a town, in respect to Kim's comment and Dave's comment and Laura's comment, start this conversation of reevaluating what the town's relationship is to these trail networks.
For to the point of Catamount, which I go to like pretty much every other day. John, the guy who takes who's the ED, I think also. Yeah, he was telling me this summer that like he's been there entire Saturdays and Sundays with like 2 cars in the parking lot, and that like not a single user fee collected. So Catamount is feeling the same thing that Adam just talked about. And, that might be a conversation that we want to bring John in for here too, that like, if this is going to be a bigger, broader discussion about like, how do we support those networks? I think we should bring them in and have that conversation too.
Great.
I think there's also, this is just like, I'm saying this just so it's on the record and we don't forget. I think like the state is putting a lot of energy into promoting the outdoor rec economy. And functionally, that falls mostly on municipalities like ours, because the vast majority of trail networks are not on state-owned land, right? And so I think that there's like maybe this other thing that needs to happen where, in addition to talking to trail managers like John and Adam, and maybe Nick at Vimba with like a statewide view, there's like this talking up that needs to happen that goes something like, if you're going to continue to promote this as a tourism draw, there needs to be support for maintenance. And I feel like that's a conversation with the state, and I'm just like putting a pin in it.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
he's gonna have the
No.
last word.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
It's okay. We have more conversations to come about this.
Adam, thank you so much for your time this morning and for coming in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
likewise.
Thanks, Adam.
See you on the trails.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
See y'all.
Okay,